After a decade of loyalty, my boss smiled coldly. We're replacing you with someone cheaper. Business, nothing personal. I nodded. Thanks for the notice. What they didn't know was that I held the patent on the software they depended on. The next morning, their system would shut down. The words hit me like a slap, sharp and cold. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the man across the sleek conference table. The man I'd spent 10 years making rich. 10 years of loyalty. 10 years of problem solving. Late nights fixing their mistakes. And this was how it ended. Marcus Dwyer, CEO of Nexora Systems, leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled like he was doing me a favor. His smirk was subtle, but I caught it. The kind of smug expression people wear when they believe they have all the power. We've decided to bring in someone more cost-effective, he continued, voice smooth, practiced. It's nothing personal, Elena. Just business. I clenched my jaw, forcing my expression into something neutral. It wasn't just business. It was betrayal. A decade of my life, gone with a single sentence. The conference room was silent, except for the soft hum of the city outside. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows I could see downtown San Francisco stretching beneath us, thriving, relentless, a world that never paused. But in that moment, it felt like everything had stopped. The board members sat stiffly around the table, avoiding my eyes. Cowards. They couldn't even look at me. I swallowed down the sting of humiliation, keeping my voice even. When does this take effect? Marcus's smirk grew. We'll need you to assist in the transition for the next 2 weeks. Your replacement will shadow you. Get up to speed. After that, we'll finalize your severance package. Shadow me. They wanted me to train the very person taking my place. A sharp bitterness curled in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I nodded once, standing slowly. Thanks for the notice. I didn't wait for a response. I turned, walking toward the door with measured, even steps. My heels clicked against the marble floor, a steady, deliberate rhythm. If they thought I would beg, cry, or plead for my job, they didn't know me at all. As I reached the door, Marcus's voice followed, casual and dismissive. We appreciate everything you've done, Elena. But change is inevitable. I didn't look back. A decade of loyalty, traded for a cheaper model. The elevator ride down felt suffocating. I clenched my fists, breathing in through my nose, trying to suppress the storm of emotions crashing inside me. Bitterness, resentment, betrayal, not just at Marcus, but at myself, forever believing that loyalty meant something in this industry. I had given everything to Nexora Systems. I had built their software architecture from the ground up, every system, every line of code, every efficiency that made them a powerhouse. It was mine, and they were throwing me away for someone cheaper. The doors slid open and I stepped into the bustling lobby. People rushed past me, lost in their own worlds, oblivious to the fact that my world had just shifted. I barely registered stepping onto the sidewalk. The city air was cool against my skin. My thoughts were spinning, replaying every moment, every sacrifice, every night I'd spent hunched over my laptop fixing last-minute crises that weren't even my fault. And then, like a slow dawn breaking through darkness, a realization crept in. They thought they had won. They thought I would just walk away. They had no idea what I still held in my hands. My fingers curled around my phone, my pulse steady now, controlled, calculated. Nexora Systems ran on my software. Software I held the patent for. I had made sure of it, years ago. The system they depended on to process millions of dollars in transactions, to manage their entire operation. It wasn't theirs. It was mine, and they had just severed their only connection to it. I inhaled slowly, tilting my face to the sky, letting the realization settle deep into my bones. I had 2 choices. 1, I could fight for my job, beg them to reconsider, play the game on their terms. Or 2, I could let them burn themselves to the ground. The second option felt far more appealing. I walked home, my mind already crafting the next steps. No rash decisions, no impulsive moves. I wouldn't lash out in anger. I would let them believe they had won. By tomorrow morning, I would revoke their rights to my software, and the moment my 2 weeks were up, Nexora's entire system would start failing, not through sabotage, but legally they would try to replace me, but they would fail, because my software wasn't something you could just hand off to a cheaper employee. It was intricate, complex, built with a unique architecture that only I fully understood. I reached my apartment, unlocking the door with steady hand. The space was quiet, dimly lit by the city's glow outside. I tossed my coat over a chair, exhaling slowly. The anger was still there, but it wasn't controlling me anymore. It was fuel. I sat down at my desk, opening my laptop. It was time to make my move. They thought they could replace me. They were wrong. My fingers danced over the keyboard, pulling up legal documents, patent agreements, and contract details. A small smile played at my lips. I wasn't going to destroy them. I was simply going to let them fall apart on their own. Let them see what happens when you cast aside the architect of your success. Tomorrow morning, Marcus Dwyer would sit in his corner office, sipping his overpriced coffee, feeling smug about replacing me. By the next morning, Nexora Systems would be on its knees and I wouldn't even have to lift a finger. The glow of my laptop screen illuminated the dim apartment, casting sharp shadows on the walls. My fingers moved with quiet precision, pulling up the legal files that had been sitting in my private cloud storage for years. I had never thought I'd need them, not like this. But something in me had always known. Insurance was necessary when you worked with men like Marcus Dwyer. I clicked on the patent document, scanning the lines I had nearly memorized. Ownership of software rights, including all derivative works, remains exclusively with the original creator, unless a transfer agreement has been legally executed. A slow, deliberate breath left my lip. There was no transfer agreement. They had built their empire on my software, and they never even thought to take ownership of it. Arrogance, carelessness, stupidity. It didn't matter which. It only mattered that now it was my advantage. I pulled up the formal revocation request. One click, one submission, and everything they relied on would cease to belong to them. Not yet, I told myself. Not tonight. Tonight, I would let them sleep easy, let them go home, sip their expensive wine, and feel victorious. Tomorrow morning, the real game would begin. I shut my laptop and pushed back from my desk. My mind was buzzing, but my body was drained. 10 years in a company, and just like that, I was nobody to them. The thought should have stung, but all I felt was clarity. They saw me as disposable, but they had no idea that they were the ones skating on thin ice. Without me, they were nothing. I stood and stretched, arms overhead, before heading into the kitchen. The hum of the city outside filled the silence. The aroma of the coffee I hadn't touched earlier still lingered in the air. I wrapped my fingers around the cool ceramic of the mug, staring out at the skyline beyond my window. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. A normal morning. If anyone looked at me, they wouldn't see the woman whose entire career had been discarded just 24 hours earlier. They wouldn't see the gears turning behind my calm expression. By the time I arrived at Nexora Systems, the office was already buzzing with activity. I stepped out of the elevator, moving through the familiar rows of workstations, past the glass offices where executives barked into Bluetooth headsets. I was greeted with stiff nods and awkward half-smiles. People knew. Words spread fast in places like this. No one wanted to be the next name on Marcus Dwyer's list. I reached my office. No, not mine anymore, I reminded myself, because there she was. The replacement. She sat at my desk, clicking through files on my computer. Her blonde hair was tied back in a sleek ponytail, and she wore the same kind of tailored blazer I had once worn, back when I still believed in this company. I should have felt something. Resentment, anger, jealousy. But all I felt was certainty. She wouldn't last here. She wouldn't survive what was coming. Later that morning, Marcus called me into his office. He leaned back in his chair, watching me with that same smug expression he'd worn the day before. "I assume you'll be professional about this," he said, gesturing toward my replacement. I met his gaze, unflinching. "Of course," he chuckled. "Good. I knew you'd see reason." He didn't know anything. I spent the afternoon walking Lauren. Yes, I'd learned her name through the system. I answered every question, pointed out the important file, acted as though it mattered, all while knowing that in less than 24 hours, none of it would. I wasn't cruel. I didn't want her to fail. But this wasn't about her. This was about them. The day dragged on. At 5:30 sharp, I packed up the last of my things. A few old notebooks, a framed photo I'd forgotten was even there. I slid it into my bag. As I walked toward the elevator, I passed Marcus's office. He was on the phone, laughing, probably celebrating the fact that he'd cut costs without a hitch. He had no idea that the foundation of his company was already cracking beneath him. I stepped into the elevator, letting the doors close. One more night. That's all they had left. At 6:11 a.m., I logged into my private terminal. The legal request had already been approved. Nexora Systems' license to my software was officially revoked. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee, calm, collected, certain. At precisely 8:32 a.m., my phone buzzed. Emergency alert. Internal system failure detected. I smirked. Right on time. By 9:15 a.m., Nexora was in chaos. Marcus's assistant was the first to call. Alina? Hi, listen. We need you to come in. There's a situation. Her voice was rushed, laced with panic. I glanced at the time and smiled. Oh, what kind of situation? Everything's down, she said. The client portals, the internal databases. It says it's a licensing issue. But she paused, her breath shaky. They said the software isn't ours anymore. That's because it's not, I replied evenly. I'm sorry, but that's really not my problem anymore. I could hear raised voices in the background, someone, probably Marcus, yelling. The assistant inhaled shakily. Look, can you just come in? Maybe we can. I ended the call. I wasn't going back. I had already given them everything. I watched the news unfold from the comfort of my apartment. By noon, Nexora was making headlines. By 2 p.m., investors were pulling out. And by the time the sun dipped below the San Francisco skyline, Marcus Dwyer was scrambling to salvage his empire. Me? I was already building something new. They never saw me coming. I didn't ruin them. I didn't sabotage or hack or break anything. I simply let them collapse under the weight of their own arrogance. Tomorrow morning, Marcus Dwyer would wake up to the remains of the company he thought he could run without me. Me? I'd wake up free, with nothing to lose, and everything to gain. I leaned back in my chair, coffee in hand, my laptop open in front of me. The chaos was already unfolding, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. The news was everywhere. Tech giant Nexora Systems faces major system outage. Clients left in the dark as internal infrastructure collapses. A slow smile curled at the corner of my lips as I scrolled through the articles. It had only been a few hours, but panic was spreading fast. Clients were furious, investors were jumping ship, and I knew exactly what was happening in that glass tower I used to call my office. Marcus Dwyer was losing control. He thought he could replace me. He thought I was disposable. He was learning the hard way. My phone buzzed again. Marcus. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. Then, silent. I could imagine him, frustration mounting, pacing his office, trying to salvage the mess he'd created. The IT team scrambling, refreshing their screens, trying to fix something that wasn't broken. It simply no longer belonged to them. I took a sip of coffee. The rich, bitter taste grounded me. They had no plan, no backup, no contingency, because I was the plan. And I was gone. Inside that conference room, I knew exactly how it was playing out. I had been in those meetings before, just never on the side of the disaster. Marcus would be at the head of the table, hands clenched, temper barely contained. I need answers, his voice sharp, urgent. Why is everything failing? The IT director, probably sweating through his shirt, would shift uncomfortably. Sir, it's not a crash. It's a licensing issue. Marcus would pause, confused. What do you mean? A heavy breath, a reluctant answer. Elena Ward revoked our access. Silence. I could almost hear it. The hush. The sharp inhale. the color draining from Marcus's face. That's impossible, he would say, voice wavering before snapping back to false control. We own the software. A longer silence. Then the quiet, fatal words. No, sir. She does. I tapped my fingers against my coffee mug, waiting for the next call. It wouldn't take long. Marcus would be spiraling, mind scrambling for a way out. He prided himself on control, on always being 5 steps ahead. But this time, he never even saw it coming. My software wasn't just a tool, it was the backbone of Nexora Systems. Every client dashboard, every internal process, every layer of security, all of it, built on my architecture. And now, they had nothing. I refreshed my inbox. More notifications, more alerts. Nexora was bleeding out. And I had only just begun watching. My phone vibrated again, but it wasn't Marcus this time. Unknown number. I smirked. The board. They'd realized what was happening. And Marcus's charm wouldn't save him now. Not when their stock was plummeting. Clients were demanding refunds, and every major news outlet was reporting the disaster. I let the call go to voicemail. I already knew what they wanted. A fix. Me, but I wasn't their employee anymore. I wasn't their safety net. They had made that choice. By mid-afternoon, the full extent of the damage was sinking in. The board was furious. Investors were fleeing. Competitors were circling like vultures, poaching clients off Nexora's dying corpse. Another call. Another voicemail. This time, I listened. Elena, this is Harold Chambers, from the board. We, need to discuss a solution. We're hoping to negotiate a way to... I deleted the message before he finished. They weren't hoping to negotiate. They were desperate. I knew it was coming. Marcus Dwyer's name flashed on my phone again. I let it ring. Then on the 4th try, I picked up. Hello, Marcus. There was silence on the other end. A hesitation. Then his voice came through. Tight. Laced with frustration. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, fingers drumming against my knee. Do we? A sharp exhale. Elena, come on. I know you're upset. I laughed softly. Not the kind of laugh that meant amusement. The kind that said, I'm not buying your nonsense. Upset? I repeated, savoring the word. Marcus, I'm not upset. I'm just watching the inevitable unfold. His breathing grew tense on the other end. You made your point, all right? But we can fix this. You can come back. I cut him off. Come back? I let the silence stretch between us before speaking again. You really don't get it, do you? Marcus said nothing, so I continued, voice low and measured. You thought I was just another name on the payroll. You thought you could replace me with someone cheaper. But here we are. And tell me, Marcus, how's that working out for you? Nothing. Just the sound of his defeat settling into the silence. Elena, he tried again, but his voice was different now. Quieter, weaker. I'll double your salary. Triple it. Just, I sighed. Marcus. He stopped. I don't want your money, I said, my tone final. I just want you to understand something. Another pause. You needed me. I never needed you. And with that, I hung up. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then set it down beside me. I felt nothing. No guilt. No remorse. Just the quiet satisfaction of justice. Nexora Systems was failing, and there was nothing they could do about it. Tomorrow morning, Marcus would wake up to the ruins of the company he thought he had built. Me? I would wake up free, with nothing to lose, and everything to gain. I exhaled slowly. The weight of finality didn't press down like an anchor. It settled over me like a quiet triumph. Nexora was unraveling, thread by thread, and I didn't need to lift a finger. I had already done my part. The rest, gravity would take care. The city outside my apartment stretched wide and endless, bathed in the golden hues of late afternoon. I stared at it for a moment, then leaned back in my chair, arms stretching over my head. It was almost poetic, really. They had thrown me away, and now they were drowning without me. The frantic attempts to fix the unfixable had begun. By the time the sun dipped below the skyline, my inbox had flooded with desperate emails. Subject, urgent. Please respond. Subject, let's talk. Subject, Immediate assistance needed. They were all the same. Empty, pleasant, forced apologies. Hollow requests for a conversation. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I refreshed the news. Stock drops 37% in a single day, as Nexora Systems faces catastrophic system failure. A soft hum of satisfaction stirred in my chest. Investors weren't just pulling back. They were running. I scrolled further. Marcus Dwyer, CEO of Nexora Systems, issues statement. We are working to resolve the situation. I clicked on the link, watching the embedded video load. There he was. Marcus, sitting stiffly at the press conference table. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, something I had never seen before. His jaw was tight, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He looked defeated. I turned up the volume. We understand the concerns our clients and investors have, he said, his voice carefully controlled. But I could hear the edge beneath it. We are working closely with our team to address the technical issues and will provide updates as soon as possible. A reporter cut in, sharp and demanding. Mr. Dwyer, is it true that Elena Ward, your former head architect, revoked the company's access to the core software? Marcus's jaw twitched. He didn't speak. Then his fingers tightened around the microphone. No comment. I smirked. The comment sections were ruthless. How do you fire the one person who built your company? Looks like someone made a huge mistake. This is why you don't undervalue your employees. Karma at its finest. But the backlash wasn't just online. It was spilling into the real world. Clients were dropping contracts, citing breach of service agreements. Vendors were pulling partnerships, unwilling to associate with a company spiraling into instability. And the employees, they were turning on him too. Desperate calls, empty apologies. At exactly 7:45 p.m., my phone rang again. I stared at the screen. Marcus Dwyer. I let it go to voicemail. Just as expected, it rang again. This time I answered. Elena. His voice was taut with frustration, but there was something else woven into it. Panic, a tone I had never heard from him before. I took my time responding. Marcus. He exhaled. The sound was sharp, forced. I need to see you. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, that's interesting. You didn't seem to need me a few days ago. I was wrong. The words were clipped, forced through gritted teeth. Look, Elena. I know you're upset. I laughed, cutting him off. A quiet, dry laugh. I'm not upset, Marcus. I'm watching you choke on your own arrogance. Silence. He cleared his throat. I'll offer you triple your salary. I'll rewrite your contract. Hell, I'll give you part ownership. Just come back and fix this. I smiled, letting his desperation soak in. Marcus, I said slowly, savoring every syllable, you still don't get it, do you? Another silence. You didn't just fire me. I continued. You treated me like I was nothing. Like I was disposable. Like I wasn't the reason your company thrived. I let the pause linger before finishing. Calm and final. And now you want me back? No, Marcus. You don't get to undo what you did. You don't get to fix this with money or apology. This isn't about revenge. I let the words hang in the air. This is about consequences. And I hung up. The legal consequences hit hard. The next morning, I woke up to another wave of headlines. Nexora faces multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Clients demand compensation as systems collapse. Shareholders call for CEO Marcus Dwyer's resignation amid crisis. I clicked through the articles. The lawsuits were pouring in. Corporate partners claiming contract violations. Small businesses citing lost revenue. Even individual consumers joining class action suits. The board was in chaos. Investors had completely lost confidence. And now, Marcus's own executives were turning on him. I let out a quiet breath, taking a sip of my coffee. I had never wanted this to turn into a spectacle. But that's the thing about arrogance. It makes people blind to their own destruction. By noon, it was official. The board had forced Marcus Dwyer out. The same board members who had nodded along as he dismissed me. They had now dismissed him. It was poetic, really. I sat at my desk scrolling through my messages. A flood of job offers, partnership inquiries, invitations from competitors who had been waiting for an opportunity like this. I could start over, build something better, something mine. A soft exhale left my lip. Marcus had thought he was invincible, that he controlled everything. But power isn't just about money or titles, it's about who holds the foundation. And I had always held it. He just realized it too late. I closed my laptop. No more emails. No more call. Nexora Systems was no longer my concern. They had tried to replace me. They had tried to erase me. Instead, they had destroyed themselves. Me? I wasn't looking back, because the best revenge is simply proving you never needed them to begin with. I closed my laptop with finality. The hum of the city outside filled the quiet space of my apartment. Nexora Systems was no longer my concern. The emails, the calls, the frantic attempts to pull me back into their sinking ship. It was all over. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. For the first time in a long time, I felt something unfamiliar, weightless. The past 10 years had been spent chasing deadlines, solving crises, proving my worth to people who never truly valued it. Now, there was no one left to impress, no fires to put out, no boss looming over me with false promises. I was free, and yet, as I stared out at the glowing skyline, another realization settled in. What now? The silence in my apartment was unnerving. No urgent notifications, no meetings to prepare for, no endless cycles of proving myself. It was just me. For years I had defined myself through my work. Elena Ward, the architect of Nexora's success, the woman who held it all together. But now, I wasn't just the person who took them down. I had to become something else, something more. I reached for my phone, scrolling through the flood of job offers and partnership requests, competitors, startups, investment firms. They all wanted me. They had watched the downfall of Nexora and saw exactly what I was capable of. But I didn't want another job. I didn't want to spend another decade building someone else's empire. I wanted my own. By morning, the industry had already shifted. The same insiders who once praised Nexora were now dissecting its downfall. One architect, one decision, the collapse of a giant. How Elena Ward outmaneuvered the very company that betrayed her. I wasn't just a former employee anymore. I had become a symbol, a cautionary tale for companies that undervalue their talent, and that was powerful. I stepped out onto my balcony. The crisp morning air bit at my skin. The city stretched out before me, alive with possibility. I had the leverage, the name, the reputation. Now I just needed a plan. Over the next few days, I sketched out ideas, made calls, reached out to old connections, people I trusted, people who knew what I could do. The idea was simple: build something better. I didn't want another tech firm bloated with bureaucracy and greed. I wanted innovation, without the corporate rot, a company that thrived on talent, not exploitation. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. That part was over. I wanted to win. The messages from Nexora didn't stop. Marcus had gone silent, but others weren't giving up so easily. Elena, we can fix this. Name your price. We made a mistake. Let's rebuild together. Each message was another reminder of how quickly power shifts when you realize who actually holds it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Their company was in ruins, and I wasn't interested in salvaging it. I had bigger plans. A week later, I walked into the offices of a venture capital firm, a place I once would have been nervous to step into back when I was just an employee, trying to prove my worth. But today, I wasn't there to ask for a job. I was there to launch something of my own. I sat across from the firm's director, a man who had followed my career for years. He leaned forward, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "Elena, what's next for you?" I smiled. "I'm building something new." His expression shifted, interested, intrigued. "Tell me more." And so I did. I told him about my vision, about a company that wouldn't just replicate what Nexora had done, but reinvent the entire industry. A workplace where talent was valued, where the next generation of architects wouldn't have to fight to be seen. By the time I finished, there was no hesitation. "We'll fund you," he said. "Whatever you need." I exhaled slowly, shaking his hand. This wasn't just a deal. It was the beginning of something unstoppable. That evening, I stood in front of my laptop one last time. I clicked on Nexora's website, watched as their stock hovered at its lowest point in a decade. The forums were filled with speculation. Would they survive? Would they recover? I already knew the answer. It didn't matter. I closed the tab. Then, without a second thought, I deleted every email, every voicemail, every trace of the company that had once defined me. I wasn't Elena Ward, the woman they discarded. I was Elena Ward, the woman who rebuilt herself. And this time, no one would ever take me for granted again. The best revenge isn't destroying them. It's never needing them again. I took one last deep breath before shutting my laptop. The past was done. Now, the future was mine to build. Elena Ward's story is a powerful reminder that loyalty should never mean silence in the face of injustice. For 10 years, she built the foundation of a company that discarded her the moment it became convenient. But instead of breaking, she rose calmly, strategically, and with unwavering dignity. This isn't just a tale of corporate betrayal. It's a lesson in knowing your worth, protecting your work, and standing your ground when others try to erase you. True power isn't loud, it's calculated. And sometimes, the best form of justice is letting arrogance destroy itself. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think twice about how we treat the people who hold everything together, please like this video, subscribe for more emotional and empowering stories like this, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their worth. I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments which region or country you're watching from. Your voice helps build this amazing community.